Hello and welcome to another edition of Ask the Experts here on 570 News Radio. Faisal Susiwala is with us once again. Faisal's been serving the Waterloo region since 1988. He's the broker of record with Remax Twin City, recently named the top selling agent in Canada, and is also recognized as the #1 individual Remax agent worldwide. Faisal is the author of the book, The Real Deal, Billion-Dollar Real Estate Broker, and he's taken some time to be with us today. And thanks so much for your time, Faisal.
Thanks for having me on, Brock.
Happy to have you here. Listeners, if you're interested in any of the information we discuss over the next hour, you can reach out to Faisal. Start your journey at homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly, 519-624-5555, or by email, Faisal@homeshack.com. We'll also be uploading this show to the 570 News Radio website for you to listen to a later date. Click on the Listen tab, and it will take you there. So, Faisal, last time we talked, 2025 was looming ahead. Here we are. It's a new year full of new possibilities. If you're going down your checklist of financial tasks that we should be doing to start off 2025, what's going to start us off on the right foot?
So, these are, again, hard things to get your head around and think about and conversations to have with family and whatnot. But it's very important to review your will. As we're getting older, it's so much more important now than ever to review your will so you're not leaving your loved ones behind with unknown assets. There are major life changes that occur in people's lives, marriage, divorce, purchase of new property, acquisitions. So it's just important to have something set up. Number 2 on that list is just review your TFSAs, your RSP contributions. Just make sure your limits are in check so you don't get faced with penalties. If you've over contributed, especially. And if you've taken withdrawals out, just ensure that you've accounted for those so that you're not off balance on your contributions. And again, talking to your accountant or just checking your notes as to what your limit is compared to what your allowance is will save you a lot of headaches with CRA. Taking notes of your gains and losses of last year. So this is a good time to reflect on, did I experience capital gains? Did I lose money in the stock market? Where are the funds sitting at as far as your balance sheet? So a lot of this has to do with just some tax planning. And although we know we procrastinate and we say, well, we've got some time before tax season is upon us. And if you're like me, it's all of a sudden a panic in the last 30 days to get all of these things in order. So if you just do a little bit at a time now, I think it'll save you a lot of aggravation and frustration and that freak out at the end to say, I got to get all this stuff done.
Good idea. And you've that idea of, we always want to start off on the right foot and making sure that everything's in order. And like you said, don't put it off. Don't leave it until the last minute. It's a great idea to make sure that we kind of clean up our homes. We do that tidy. It's a good idea to do that with our finances as well too. If 2025 is starting to look like a time where some families may be deciding that they want to expand a little bit, and maybe they're looking at building a secondary unit for a family member. Maybe it's for a returning child, or maybe it's for an elderly family member as well too. We've talked a bit about this before, that it's a great idea, but I know that you've got some words of caution for people as well too. What would folks need to be aware of if they're going to be making those decisions this year?
Yeah, sort of in keeping in theme with things to not create headaches with the CRA. Let's look at the incentives that are out there. So there is a government incentive to build a secondary unit for a family member, but be careful when you do so. Sometimes the benefit does not outweigh the aggravation that you're going to have with Canada Revenue. Taxpayers building a secondary unit for a family member under the multi-generational home renovation tax credit could face a risk of creating that portion of the home as a profit center, which now takes away the possibility of claiming it under the principal residence exemption on that part of the property. So
Okay.
right now, if you have a gain of, let's say, $100,000 on your principal residence, and you don't pay capital gains tax on that because it's your primary residence. Let's just say that you turn 20% of that home into a secondary unit using the incentive program. Now, when you
Now,
go to
go to
sell your
sell your
property,
property.
you could be faced with paying a gain on that 20% of that house,
Right.
as opposed to
Right.
getting a full exemption. So taxpayers building that secondary unit under the multi-generational could lose that. The credit available since 2023 offers a 15% rebate
Okay.
up to $50,000 on renovation. So that translates to about $7,500. So in one hand, you're getting the $7,500 rebate, but let's say your gain was $20,000 or $30,000, and depending on what your tax rate is at and what the CRA deems the new capital gains tax to be at, you could be giving that back plus more
Right.
at the time of sale of your property. So just really consider these facts, talk to your accountant, ensure that you're not taking on a problem. So again, it's going to come right back down to what the expected gain is at the time of sale and what percentage of the home you're turning into a secondary unit. And sometimes, when you look at the amount of $7,500, it may not be worthwhile taking the rebate
Right.
just to give it back at the end.
Good advice. And I know that we've talked at length about this topic of, trying to create those rental units for people, whether they be family or not. But as you're saying, sometimes it isn't necessarily worth the risk. The other thing I was hoping to talk about in the first section is what do you see happening right now in the rental market these days? Are things getting any easier for people that are trying to rent, or are prices going down, or what's 2025 look like for people?
Yeah, we're certainly seeing a decline in the rental rates. So is it getting easier? I think landlords are softening their position a little bit now, especially when we see the inventory climbing up on availability of rental units. So naturally, they have to reduce the rents. We've seen about a 1.6% rent drop on the average price. So across Canada, you're looking at about $2,150 for a two-bedroom rental unit now, compared to a year ago, it would have been about 2% higher,
Right.
and prior to that, it was 18% higher. So there's been a massive decline from the peak. And of course, real estate values were up, inventory was low, rental availability wasn't there. But when take the gains, take the losses, wash it all out, we're up about 6.7% over the original, say, 2021, 2022 rent rates. We're still up 6.7%. So it's still fairly good news for landlords. And I think it's running in conjunction with inflation rates. It's in balance as opposed to having these 10, 12, 15% hikes in 1 year on rent. So it is getting easier. Landlords are softening their position, allowing more student rental to happen, allowing combined families to move into dwellings just for affordability. So we're seeing a lot more flexibility, in my opinion, on the landlord side today.
And I know we've talked about this in the past too, from that viewpoint of the landlord. Better to have someone who, if you can build a rapport relationship with, and you've got the same renters for 10 years, for 15 years, that you've built up a relationship. There's that personal piece to it. Those things always play a role in how you go about your business as well.
It really does. And when you have a tenant who has been good, pays on time, maintains the property well. If you look at the nightmare or stories that we've heard on the news where people haven't paid rent for 6 months or 9 months, you may have, gotten that tenant who is willing to pay you the big bucks. But if they only pay those big bucks for 2 months and then live there for free for 9 months,
Yeah.
when you do the math, it doesn't work out. So, to landlords, be good to your good tenants,
Right.
treat them well, give them breaks when you can, and try to stay on top of those maintenance issues so you keep a happy tenant.
Yeah, and that's great advice to pass on, especially if you're just starting to get in the game of looking at real estate in that window. We're coming up on a break here at Ask the Experts. When we come back, we'll get Faisal to tell us some of the best ways to help out the younger generation. Stay with us here on 570 News Radio.